I had what many people would call a warped childhood. Many children are raised on nursery rhymes, fairy tales, and Dr. Seuss. And while my childhood did have memories, my mother included another genre in mine, and my sister's upbringing, horror. I cannot count the times that when me and my sister, when I was reading some Stephen King's short stories for bedtime rather than more common children's stories. Popsy was my favorite. I grew up watching the classic horror movies and being told ghost stories. Many people, when I tell this to them, ask me if I had a lot of nightmares as a kid as a result. But the truth is quite opposite. I was not afraid of the boogeyman or ghosts. To me, ghosts and goblins were just simply fictional characters that only appeared in books, movies, and even stories around a campfire. The horror genre was simply a part of my life, and I loved being scared, so naturally when Halloween was one of my favorite times of the year. I remember one Halloween many years ago. I was young, but not so young that I have first-hand memories of the events soon to follow. There was a Halloween attraction that was running just down the street from my house. It had been going on every Halloween for a few years, but my parents had never let me and my sister go before. Then one year, we were finally given the permission to go to this attraction. The attraction was built into an old abandoned manor house, just some sort of place that you would expect a Halloween attraction to be built. I remember being very excited as I waited to get in the house because lots of people were coming out, raving about how scary it was, and I was highly anticipating having my own time inside. Like most Halloween attractions, they let the people inside the house in small groups. Because my sister and I were only children, the attendants at the door made sure that we were put in the same group as our parents. Finally, we stepped inside. It could have been like any haunted house in America in the 90s, full take on fake fog and grease-painted actors, and I wasn't overly scared, just because my mother always reminded me that the actors are not allowed to touch you. But I jumped out and screamed along with everyone else, as a monster jumped out of hidden nooks and crannies of the whole haunted manor house. Eventually, we made our way down to the basement, which I had been changed due to the stereotypical mad doctor. Seeing the common of a lot of haunted houses, to say the least, there was a lot of fake blood everywhere, but I'll never forget the basement, because something seemed just a little out of place. Sometimes even the most normal things could be some diabolical if you were in the perspective. It's something that you'll see a few modern ghost haunting shows in B shorts. There was nothing immediately jumped out as being evil. There was certainly nothing like The Exorcist happening to tip me off something wrong. It was just a simple sight, but it just made it much more unnerving because it stood out against the over-the-horror backdrop in a decorated room. In the midst of the bloody carnage, as a mad doctor's operating room, I remembered that an old woman was sitting at the far corner of the room. She looked to be like in her 80s. She had thinning gray hair and was very thin. I would be lying to myself, and I said that if she didn't scare me, then the rest of the attraction combined. At the time, I didn't have much of an understanding of the effects of the different physical elements that have no effect on the person. But also looking back now, I would say that the victim had a bad stroke. Sometimes a bad stroke will leave one person on the side of his or her face paralyzed, and that's exactly what happened to her. One of side was dropping and saliva was leaking out of the corner of their dropped mouth. She was talking, yelling at us as we passed by. Her words were badly slurred because of her paralyzed face. But I could make out she was yelling, "Stop! Get out!" over and over again. Even passing through the basement and going over to the other side, I could still hear her screaming in that awful, slurred way up the stairs. I was extremely disturbed by the sight of the old woman, but as I got away from her, I began to feel better. She was obviously an actor who was working for the attraction. Most of the attraction worked on jump scares, and she was obviously there just to cater more psychological horror. Well, in my case it worked, and it certainly worked on me. We emerged out into the night once again, and we got in the instant sense of relief that makes horror so addicting. We have survived that moment. My sister instantly began to talk about which part was her favorite. An actor who jumped out of her in her werewolf form had been her favorite. and when it came to my turn to share, I could think of nothing to do besides the old woman I'd seen. I told about my family of how the old woman in the basement had scared me the most. "That woman in the basement, Ashley?" my mother asked. I was shocked. I began to describe her as well as I could have seen. When I had finished, my mother said that she hadn't seen any woman fitting that description down in the basement. The rest of my family agreed with her. I put the whole incident out of my mind. Like I said, I didn't believe in ghosts, and I didn't believe that they were real. I tried to rationalize why they had missed the old woman and her screams, in each attempt to do this more pathetic than the least. But I knew that the ghosts couldn't be real. Next year, I was eager to step foot in the old manor again, but I was horrified to discover that the haunted attraction had been shut down and would not be opening again. Since I lived so close to the haunt, a few people in my neighborhood had taken up jobs there, and I asked around them about why it had closed. The few people that would talk to me that the old manor house was really haunted with real ghosts, and that too many people were refusing to work there again because of the paranormal activity going on there. Their stories ranged from objects moving on their own to apparitions and even physical attacks against the living had entered certain parts of the house. I laughed it off. People were just getting the atmosphere of the Halloween haunt mess with them. It was probably because they were just a couple of pranksters messing with the workers. But no matter how much I tried to explain to the workers how it could be a couple of jokers messing around, they kept insisting it was impossible to have it being in a human activity. But even I tried to convince them. I still couldn't remember but the old woman that I had seen in the basement, that no one else had. I was kind of nervous about the whole thing and wanted more information about the house. Those days you can look up anything on the internet and have answers within seconds. But the 90s was not like that. A few people had the internet at the time, and my family was one that did not have internet access. So I went to the next biggest thing, my mother. I asked her about the old manor house. At first she was reluctant to tell me, which unnerved me more than anything, because she never really shied away from telling us from the nature before. Finally she told me what she knew. The manor started out as a private residence built in 1922, but the original owner lost the house in the foreclosure. After that it became a sanatorium, which was like something like a small hospital. Just by the virtue of being a hospital in the area, it was the only hospital around at the time. A lot of people passed away within those walls. In fact, some of the reports say that there was at least one death a day within those walls during the time. But it was not like that part that my mom was reluctant to tell me. She told me that afterwards it would turn into a nursing facility and they would have taken care of sick older people, just like the old woman I had seen during my family walkthrough. But the records of the abuse that came out of that place was numerous. Many ex-employees confessed that they quit soon after being hired because the vast amount of malpractice happened there. My mother remembered all this because it was in the newspapers when it was going on. It was a huge deal in the community. It made me feel a little sick to think about all those people. All those things were treated in that horrible place. And that's not all. Local legend has long said that the building was haunted by the tortured souls of people who died living under those horrible conditions there. The man who built the Halloween attraction there knew of the history of the legends surrounding the place and built the attraction with the sole purpose of just playing off those stories. It was then that I knew that I had seen the ghost of the woman who had died in the building. She just wanted to spend her afterlife in peace. But instead, every year she and her fellow ghosts were interrupted by the living storming through the place with their thousands, turning their situation into a joke. And then for the first time ever, I began to treat ghosts and spirits as fictional characters, not only frightened to scare, but as physical manifestation of a force humans that were not capable of understanding yet. The house to this day continues to be a hot spot for paranormal activity. The owner sets in a local paranormal group at least once a week, every Friday night to do an investigation. Several ghost-themed television shows were filmed at that location. One show brought in the psychic medium, who claims that the years of the house spent as Halloween attraction has forever scared the the house and the spirits who reside there. One thing is for sure, I am now a lot more careful about checking out the history for any Halloween haunt I go to. Ghosts are everywhere, of course, but I'll never go to a place with such a sad history attached to it. And I have never been able to get scared inside a Halloween attraction since. I don't scream, jump, or run away as actors jump out at me. Nearly all my friends have commented on my bravery in the face of those Halloween attractions. But I'm not really brave. Not really. It's just a lack of fear. Because it's hard to get scared by actors in makeup when you have been inside the real thing. Well, that was my haunted house, a creepypasta. Well, a Halloween creepypasta, whatever you prefer to call it. My final thoughts on the story? Pretty good creepypasta, actually. This is obviously a pretty good concept, having a Halloween attraction pretty much near on a house that did have some urban legends of paranormal activity in that sighting in there. And I mean, the whole concept of it seemed to be really amazing, especially I like the concept idea of, paranormal activity goes on in a haunted Halloween attraction. And it was open one year and the protagonist goes through it. But then the next year, they closed down because of it. I mean, I can honestly see, that being believable because we don't really know anything about the paranormal unless we experience it for myself. I mean, I can honestly see this being the case with, some attractions. I mean, I know some places that have closed down that were there for Halloween because of something similar to that or something. It's definitely one of those stores. But like I said, it's a really amazing story. I really do find it to be really good too. I do find the concept to be rather amazing as well as the good grammar, the sentence structuring, the storyline, everything about it was just flat out amazing, especially with the whole concept and all. I can honestly see this being a real thing and I honestly have to say it's definitely a pretty good concept for a movie like this. So anyways, the grammar is good as well as the sentence structuring and the story. It's obviously awesome. I definitely do recommend reading this for Halloween. It's on the regular Creepypasta Wiki, so feel free to give that a read if you want to. I recommend you do take a look at it because it's a pretty good movie. Well, not movie, but it's a good story. I definitely have to say it's a good story. I recommend you read it if you haven't. So, anyways, with that being the case and that being said, yeah, I can't really seem to find anything I did not like about the story, but the history about it, especially this taking place in the 90s, I actually could see this believable because this is taking place sometime in the 90s. So it's obviously really believable because the internet was around at sometime in the 90s, but so I know some people couldn't really have it at the time or something, but I still really find this to be a really good story. I really found this to be awesome. It's well made too. So I recommend you guys check out this story if you haven't. I did see Pasta's narration on this, and I did see a couple other narrations of this story, and I gotta say, it's a pretty awesome story. I definitely gotta say it's a really awesome story. It's well made, and I definitely gotta say, to the author of this story, I can't seem to find out who you are. So if you're the author of the story and you want to comment down in this video and let me know that you're the author of the story, I'll be sure to give you proper credit if the author manages to find the story and let me know in the comments that they're the ones who wrote it. I'll be sure to give them proper credit. So yeah, I'll be sure to give them proper credit. So anyways, like I've said, this is just simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's perfectly fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these creepypastas, and this is simply my own personal thoughts. I'm gonna give this story a 10 out of 10. It's a really awesome story, especially something with the paranormal, and it's something that I can honestly see this believable. So, yeah, that I could definitely say it's a pretty awesome concept. I do really have to say I do respect your opinion on this story if you don't like it. It's an awesome creepypasta. I definitely, take a look at it if you have. So, yeah, it's a pretty good story in my opinion. So, I guess with that being the case and that being said, what did you guys personally think of this creepypasta? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what you have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Feel free to leave me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. I'm the Lion Queen. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. And if you happen to be brand new here on this channel, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out.